Good evening. Welcome to Bahujan Scholars Union. Myself, Dr Biswas. Today, Bahujan Scholars Union will host a paper presentation. But before we go into the details, we would like to say a few words about Bahujan Scholars Union. The Bahujan Scholars Union, under the guidance of Mr. David Das, has been created for empowering the scholars, students of Bahujan Society of Bengal in the field of learning, teaching, and scholarship. Scholarship, which is the most important thing, and as per the career of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is concerned, Bahujan scholars and students need a strong scholarship background. It is because of this particular purpose that we have created this particular WhatsApp group. We primarily operate through online. And today, Mr. Palash Biswas will deliver his talk. So now we want to introduce our today's speaker. Mr. Palash Biswas is an assistant teacher, Jugal Kishore SS Shikhayatan, Nodia. He's also a research scholar, Department of Adivashi Studies, Vidyasagar University, West Bengal. The area of his research is tribal literature, and some of the interesting area of his research includes Dalit studies, translation studies, modernist literature, and postmodernist literature. Today, Mr. Palash Biswas will deliver a talk on the following topic: Dalitization versus Sanskritization, a critical study of I am a Dalit, an autobiographical narrative of Dr. Mahitosh Mandal. This particular text is written in Bangla and has been translated into English by Madhavi Karmakar. Now, we would like to request Mr. Palash Biswas to deliver his talk. I request Mr. Palash Biswas to talk for about 35 or 40 minutes. Then it will be followed by question answer or open discussion. Mr. Palash Biswas, you may present to paper.
Thank you, Jyoti, and thanks to all the viewers. And it's a very pleasure to hear these kind of things from such a scholar like Jyoti. And once again, I would like to thank all the people who are here. Now, basically, what I'm trying to do here that recently I have uh, read a very fantastic autobiographical narrative by Dr. Mahitosh Mandal, that is I Am a Dalit. And after reading that particular narrative, or rather we may say the autobiographical narrative, I was stunned for few minutes. I was stunned for few moments. And later, I tried to write something about this particular autobiographical narrative, that is I Am a Dalit.
Sorry to interrupt you, Palash. I mean, when you are speaking, I mean, your voice is cracking. I don't know why. I mean, you please check your
Then
audio.
you have to please mute
No,
your. Okay. Is it okay now?
no, it is not okay. It's still cracking. I mean, a lot of noise is coming on. I mean, perhaps it is technical issue. You please check it.
Is it okay,
No,
right?
no, the sound is still coming on.
Just a minute. Is it okay now, Jyoti?
No, it is not okay. I mean, I mean, there is something wrong. I mean, the voice is not coming out. I mean, a lot of buzzing sound is coming.
Okay, maybe it's for the network issue.
Uh, uh, Madhavi has sent a message that it is okay. So maybe it is with the case of my microphone. So you may go on, please.
Okay, fine, fine. Yes, some of my student also takes me that the voice is okay. I think that is your network issue. I hope so. I'm okay and fine. Shall I? Well, sorry for the interruption. I think there are some network issue because of the bad weather. Uh, Fine. Let's talk about I am a Dalit. So after the reading of this particular text, I am a Dalit, I was stunned and decided to write a paper. And this is not a presentation, but this is my humble request to all of you that don't consider these talk as a paper presentation. I'm not an expert like this, but what I feel or what I thought after the reading of this particular text, I'm just sharing with my scholar friends and my students. That's all. The thing that is, I tried to contextualize this particular text in a title, and I think we should think about this particular text in this context, that Dalitization versus Sanskritization, a critical study of I am a Dalit, an autobiographical narrative of Dr. Mahitosh Mandal. Uh, After reading this particular narrative, the thought or the thoughts which came to my mind like this: the very identity of the Dalits, or the assertion of Dalit identity, and the struggle for equality in socio political, economic, and moreover in educational sphere actually shape our Dalit literature. Mahitosh Mandal's autobiographical narrative, that is I Am a Dalit, translated from original Bangla by Madhavi Karmakar, is a reflection of complex layer of lived experience with two broad conceptual frameworks. Number one, caste-based discrimination in society, insult and humiliation in classroom, and mental torture and abomination in academic institute. And the other is a social awareness of identity politics of the marginalized people, a profound realization of Ambedkarite ideology, and a revolutionary zeal to annihilate caste through affirmative actions. Now, this particular narrative itself actually provokes the binary of the center margin conflict, which is reflected in Mandal's journey from a remote village of Goshaba, Sundarban, to Presidency University. You all have heard about Dr. Mahitosh Mandal. You know that presently he is the head of the department in the English department at Presidency University, Kolkata. Now, this narrative is a kind of horrible experience that is suffered. Later on, I will try to share with you, in short, the horrible experience of Dr. Mahitosh Mandal. Now, what I'm trying to do, or what I'm trying to say, or what I'm trying to share with all of you, that the two relations or the framing relations between Sanskritization of M.N. Srinivas and Dalitization of Kancha Ilaiya. Now, my present talk actually critiques the process of Sanskritization in the life of marginalized people and highlights its failure as reflected in the text, that is, I am a Dalit. On the other hand, I would like to evaluate the gradual development of the process of Dalitization in the life of the marginalized people as reflected in the selected text. Uh, it is a journey. It is a journey of Dr. Mahitosh Mandal. And that journey actually evokes the defeat of Sanskritization in the shape of disillusionment of the presumed Renaissance of Bengal, disillusionment of the presumed Bengali identity, and the disillusionment of the presumed merit and culture. And on the other hand, this text celebrates the deeper realization and approval of the Dalitization by going through the critical reading of Ambedkar. As you know that this particular text, it was written in Bengali and later it was translated by Madhubi Kormukar. And that translation is a fantastic translation, I must say. I will urge all of you to read the text and try to put your remark and try to put your opinion. Now, if we talk about the very text, that is, I am a Dalit, then we can find that the journey of Mohitosh Mondal is a kind of journey of the Magi. A boy from a remote village come to the center of Kolkata's pride, that is Presidency University. In the particular narrative, he talked about his upbringing and his educational life. As he was very meritorious, that's why he got so many scholarships. But when he tried to admit into a higher education for the higher education, then he was humiliated. Then he was discouraged because of his identity of as a people in the Dalit community. Now here, the two concepts in our Indian caste-based society is celebrating, or as you know that our Indian society is caste dependent. And in the respect of social hierarchy, the entire Hindu population is divided into two categories. As Ambedkar asserted in his written statement, Evidence Before the South Borough Committee in the year 1919. I am quoting from Ambedkar. Quote, from the point of view communication, the Hindus, in spite of caste, divide themselves into two significant groups, the touchables and the untouchables. The touchables have enough communication between them to enable us to say that conflict of like-mindedness, so far as the concern is not much to be dreaded, where there is a real difference and consequent conflict between the like-mindedness of the touchables and the untouchables. Untouchability is the strongest band on the endomosis between them. So, as we find that our Hindu scriptures have not only established the caste system, but have nurtured this caste system for ages. The Dharma Shastras, written by the Brahmins, are in fact only a means of oppressing the Dalits, that is, the untouchable Hindus. And behind the concept of sanctity or the purity and defilement or the pollution, the caste system has in fact perpetuated social inequality. That is why Dalits are not liberated. And this is very, very important fact to consider this present time. Even after the caste discrimination has been declared an offense under Article 17 of the Indian constitutions, Dalits still suffer. Dalits still are getting humiliated everywhere in the education institutions. sometimes as students, sometimes as teachers or professor. Let me give you a few interpretation of the very word Dalit. As you know all of that, the very term Dalit has its etymological root word dal in Sanskrit. And this word dal actually means to crack, split, be broken or torn asunder, scattered, crushed, destroyed, and trodden down. Now there is a shift during 1970s. And you know that during the 1970s, Dalit movements and the emergence of Dalit literature happened. And Dalit started to establish their identities through Dalit Panther movement in 1972. These Dalit Panther movement shaped the term Dalit in an inclusive manner. As Barbara Joshi says in his book, Untouchable Voices of the Dalit Liberation Movement, Dalits are those who are, I'm quoting from Joshi, members of scheduled caste and the tribes, neo-Buddhist, the working people, and the landless and the poor peasants, and all those who are being exploited politically, economically, and in the name of religion. Unquote. Now, in the present context, in the present scenario, uh, a review of the Government of India Act of 1935 and the Backward Class Commission's report published in the year 1955 reveals the true identities of Dalit people, regardless to their origins, nomenclature, social status, or economic affluence. One is caste-based social identity, and another is caste-based constitutional identity. Now, the caste-based social identity is formed out of the complex social structure in which one's occupation becomes hereditary. And as a result, it becomes social restricted social mobility by maintaining the fixed status hierarchies. Social identity of a particular section of the people derives from the particular caste they belong to. And on the other hand, caste based constitutional identity is the guarantee imposed by the Constitution of India, especially to scheduled caste, that is SCs, and scheduled tribes, that is STs, to break down the social barrier by means of empowerment. This is very important. What Constitution gave the identity. That's very, very important because there are lots of misinterpret of this kind of identity. And when our constitution, our Indian constitution gave the identity of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and all the other people. Now we should understand these reference of their identity in a socio-political and economical context. And as we know that the social and cultural backwardness of Dalits stand on this caste-based social identity and caste-based constitutional identity. And these two identities are give birth to concepts of Indian social science. Number one, that I have mentioned in my title, that is Sanskritization. And you know that eminent sociologist, M.N. Srinivas, proposed this term Sanskritization in his famous book, Religion and Society Among Folks of South India, published in the year 1952. And in this particular book, he tried to show how did the cultural mobility become a part of traditional caste system in Indian society. And according to Srinivas, I'm quoting from Srinivas, Sanskritization is a process by which a lower caste or tribe or many other group changes its customs, rituals, ideology, and the way of life in the direction of a higher or more often twice born caste. Unquote. So what actually Srinivas tried to say that Sanskritization is a process It is a process of social mobility, and through this process, or we can say social process, the people belong to the Dalit community. They are trying to inclining towards the upper section of the society. And it is very interesting when this conception was challenged by another conception given by Professor Kanchailaya, that is Dalitization. And it was in his book, that is Why I Am Not a Hindu, a Shudra critique of Hindutva philosophy, culture and political economy, published in the year 1996. Now, if you read this book, and I know personally that some of you have already gone through the book, that this book, as you can contextualize, that it is a systematic critique of Hindutva hegemony and Brahminical practices inherent in the Indian society. And he describes Dalit Bahujuns as collective beings, secular social beings. And what he talked about the what is Dalitization? Let me share Kanchailaya's opinion as it is recorded in his book. I'm quoting from Kanchailaya. Dalitization requires that the whole of Indian society learns from Dalit wars. Here I'm speaking specially or specifically about the scheduled caste localities. It requires that we look at the Dalit warriors in order to acquire a new consciousness. It requires that we attend to to live in these warriors, that we appreciate what is positive, what is human, and what can be extended from Dalit warriors to the whole society. So, with these two concepts, one is Sanskritization and another is Dalitization. My today's talk is or will try to evaluate Dr. Mahitosh Mandal's autobiographical narrative, I am a Dalit, in these two concepts. And at the same time, this particular text is establishing or challenging, establishing Dalitization and challenging the very concept of Sanskritization. Now, if we resume the very story or the very autobiographical narrative, then we can find out that Mahitosh Mandal, after entering in the center, that is the Kolkata, and when he wished to get the admission in a renowned institution, then he was discouraged. When he tried to research on the literary theory, then professors or professor, a particular, he mentioned a particular professor without any name, discouraged him as because he is a Dalit, and Dalit has no merit. Here is the conflict of center margin. Here we can find the conflict between Dalitization and Sanskritization. Here we can find the very conflict between the social caste-based social identity with caste-based constitutional identity. And that story is the story of suffering, a story of mental agony. Now, from the very beginning, Dr. Mandal is a very meritorious student. After teaching as a professor in a particular college for 2 years, he became the assistant professor in Presidency University. And later, he became the HOD or head of the department. The very incident which knocked Dr. Mondal, that was very inhuman, very shocking, and obviously it provokes the very conception of the Dalitization. At the same time, it challenges Srinivas's Sanskritization. That one day, accidentally, a, a dog bite him. And when he complained about these kind of stray dogs, later he got a letter that from the Animal Rights Commission, যে কুকুরকে কুকুরের কাজ কামড়েছে, সে কেন এটা নিয়ে কুকুরকে পাগল বললো বা কেন কুকুরদের এখান থেকে সরাতে হবে. And after that, he was warned, and more pathetically, all the dogs in the university campus were addressed as the name of Mahitosh. And Dr. Mahitosh Mandal was treated as a dog. That is very much pathetic. And in his autobiographical narrative, he shared so many bitter experiences. Among them was that someday he came to know that the very pride of Kolkata's, that is the Presidency University's pride, is being polluted with this kind of person, quote unquote, Dr. Mahitosh Mandal, as he took the chair of HOD. How pathetic to accept this. And I'm reading from the very text. I'm reading from the very text. I think that will easy for you to understand what he was trying to say. And it is very pathetic. And I don't know how to cope up with these things, how he beard all these things. I don't know, really know. That he got the vaccine of rabies. His wife left him in that particular scenario. And he's talking that I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be a being, quote unquote, being. It was a tremendous humiliation. It was tremendous humiliation. You can't imagine how much humiliated he was. And while narrating this particular story, he was talking about a particular imagery that is about Rohit Vemla. And I think you all are aware of Rohit Vemla. Rohit Vemla want to be a scientist like Karl, and the nourishment he got from the university led him to commit suicide. And in this particular context, Dr. Mahitosh Mandal embraced Ambedkarism. embraced the ideologies of Ambedkar. And apart from these identity, he regretted that when we will be considered as human, when we'll be human. I'm reading from the very last section of his narrative. Quite identified to be a Dalit as myself and for the other co-Dalits, there is a sprout of revolutionary zeal hidden in the mind of Rohit and me. The competition is curious. One who is ostracized, just, and warrior can never keep aloof himself from this combat. But when one plunges himself in this battle, his personal self and the impersonal self will be merged. Then there occurs an avusement for the one. When a full life his individual desired work, loved person from it. But when everyone tags him as Dalit revolutionary, this unique identity murders his whole soul. There will descend in his life an absolute hollowness. Rohit wrote that he wanted to be a scientist, write the Carl Sagan. I have also some wishes like Rohit in my own life. But today, when I have been writing about the oppression I had gone through and about millions of others like me, I am tagged as Dalit revolutionary. Then there will be prevail a shadow of fear, I guess. Will it ever be possible for men to put me outside the bracket of my reservation category? Will I ever be able to cross the barrier of the identity of my Dalit individuality? And the very last line is very pathetic. Will I be able to survive as normal human being like others? After finishing this last line, it is so hard to bear. The weight of the line is very hard to bear. Will I be able to survive as normal human being like others? What actually happened in our Indian context that if you uh, talked about Dalit, then the other people will give you the tag, you are a Dalit revolutionary. If you talked about women, or if you take a stand about women, then the society will give you a tag that you are a feminist. If you talked about the society, then you will be a Marxist. If you talked about something else, then you will be talked with another new term. We don't know who are Dalits. We don't know what is our constitutional identity or what was constitutional rights. We only concentrate on the fact of reservation, and that is the most humiliating thing that the Dalit people are getting. And all the merits of the Dalit people are measured in respect of the quote unquote reservation. But I'm not talking about reservation today. The fact that haunted me like a ghost, the last line, will I be able to survive as normal human being like others? That's very provocating. Few months ago, uh, I was talking with Jyoti, and after seeing the movie Jai Bhim, I discussed with Jyoti that we are Bahujans, we are Dalit Bahujans, we are Dalit people. When will be human? আমরা মানুষ হব কবে? Now, Dr. Mandal's journey in this center of Kolkata is really fascinating fact which give me to think about quote unquote caste based constitutional identity. And I know personally how Dalits are treated, and Dalits are treated with the very title, with the very caste they belong to. And when they came to know that this person is belong to that community, uh, then his so-called merit is questionable, a big question. This particular story, actually, or narrative, sorry, this is not a story, but autobiographical narrative, excites so many issues around us. And it is very shame that we choose our doctor with the title. We don't choose our doctor with the merit, with the skill, with the vision he got during his practice life as as a doctor. That's very pathetic thing in our society. Now, what Srinivas tried to establish through this uh, Sanskritization, so-called Sanskritization, that uh, he gave us few characteristics of Sanskritization, and he established the fact through this book, and later so many uh, sociologists or critic, they celebrated the very concept of Sanskritization, and our Indian society believes that Sanskritization is the only way. And if I say in Bengali, then Sanskritization is the only way to be, to achieve the hierarchy, quote unquote, jate otha. He talked about Sanskritization in his book, and he argued that Sanskritization is a process of imitation in Indian society. The social status of an individual is fixed on the basis of caste hierarchy, and there are many lower castes who suffer from economic, religious, or social disabilities. So, in order to improve the status, the lower caste people imitate the lifestyle of the upper caste people. And Sanskritization is a process of cultural change towards twice born caste. Sanskritization is a process in which the lower caste adopt the cultural patterns of higher caste to raise their status in a caste hierarchical order. In some societies, the lower caste people followed not only the customs of the Brahmins but also the customs of the locally dominant classes like Kshatriyas and Vaishyas to raise their status. And he also said Sanskritization is helpful in social mobility of lower caste, quote unquote, lower caste. And in this process, caste is only trying to change the status and not the social structure. And now I'm questioning you. If this concept is Sanskritization, if this is the only process to be a human of the lower caste people, then what about Dr. Mandal? Then what lacks Mandal's identity? His journey from the margin to center, if we consider this fact as a social mobility, and if we consider Mandal's journey in the educational sector, the merit he got, as he is talking about his merit in this particular narrative, that I have achieved all the criterias that I can teach any universities of India. And he is a guest lecturer or guest speaker of various international universities. Apart from all these, he gets the humiliation. He gets the mental suffer, or the sufferings, the trauma he got after that incident, jarred the very identity of a particular person. What is my identity after all? If I'm a Dalit, and if I am a revolutionary Dalit, then what about the very human essence in me? That's the very question. And in that point, the very concept of Sanskritization fails. Yes, Srinivas's Sanskritization fails in this respect. This Sanskritization is not only for the scheduled caste people, but at the same time, it is also applicable to the scheduled tribes people. I'm not saying this. Srinivas tried to say or established the fact in his book. And the concept of Sanskritization has also given rise to de-Sanskritization. And establishing this fact, he said in his book that there are some instances in modern times, some of the higher castes are imitating the behavior pattern of the lower caste. And that thing is the de-Sanskritization. And as for examples, Brahmins have started taking meat and liquor. This process is called de-Sanskritization. So what we get of this concept, that Sanskritization, if we consider these in a social field, then we can find that the social aspect of Sanskritization is much more important from the very viewpoint of change. The low caste individuals are inclined towards Sanskritization because in that in that way they can elevate their social status and get higher status in caste hierarchy. And in the economic field, economic betterment and Sanskritization is another related issue. The lower caste people have given up unclaimed occupation to raise their economic status because clean trade as a symbol of social light. It also affects the religious field, and it also affects the living patterns. And this particular narrative, I am a Dalit, challenges the norms, the characteristics, the thoughts, the ideas, the ideologies, the principles of Sanskritization. And if we talk about, or if we try to think about the very conception of Dalitization, as I have mentioned earlier, that this concept was given by Professor Kanchelaya in his book "Why I'm Not a Hindu." That's very interesting and noteworthy. In this process, actually, Kanchelaya opposing the very concept of Sanskritization, and he showed that Dalitization is the only way to achieve the rights and the identity of Dalit people. If you read the book carefully, then you can find the name is very interesting. Why uh, he is not Hindu? Why? And he gave a simple assertion: I was not born a Hindu for the simple reason that my parents did not know they are Hindus. This is the simple assertion. And when he talks about, or talked about in his book, about the very concept of Sanskritization, He was of the opinion that Sanskritized culture never let the Dalit Bahujan consciousness grow, and there was the conspiracy to suppress the formation of our consciousness. He highlights the kind of exclusion that the Dalit Bahujan community has suffered at every level, at all times, and in all aspects of life, caused by the traditional Brahminical norms of society. And the Dalit Bahujan or Dalits, however, was required to identify themselves as an independent unit in national fabric. Ilaya criticized Hinduism, and he quotes from the Gita. I'm quoting from Gita. I'm quoting from Ilaya about Gita. Quote, "You have the right to walk, but not to the fruits. কর্ম করে যাও, ফলের আশা করো না." Ilaya argues that such a statement puts all the fruits at the hands of the Brahminical people, with the working Dalit Bahujan class left with nothing except blood and toil. And here, I will also share my views after reading this particular narrative, that we can interpret this narrative in the context of Marxist view. We can relate the toil, we can relate the labor, we can relate the struggle of Dr. Mandal in the Marxist view. Then Marxism becomes a failure in this context. And we can get a new kind of Ambedkarite ideology. And that ideology is the only way that Ilaya tried to establish through the process of Dalitization. And in the later part, we get the thinker like Gopal Guru. And many scholars of the recent time, many professors of the recent time of various universities, they are working on the very conception of Dalitization. And as I said, Dr. Mandal's story, where he remembered or remembers, where he remembered the sacrifice of Rohit Vimla, that boy, that genius, that human being uh, wanted to be a scientist. When Rohit Vimla left the hostel, he left the hostel with a photograph of Ambedkar. And that journey is very much symbolical. That is not only Rohit's journey with just a picture of Ambedkar, but rather it is the stepstone of Ambedkarite movement after his death. I'm quoting from the very suicide note that Rohit wrote before committing suicide. I'm quoting from the suicide note. Quote, "The value of a man was reduced to this immediate identity and nearest possibility, to a vote, to a number, to a thing. Never was a man treated as a mind, as a glorious thing made up of stardust. In every field, in studies, in streets, in politics, and in dying and living. My birth is my fatal accident. My birth is my fatal accident." The kind of stigma that Dalit people are bearing with them, that aches. that stigma. And with all these things, what we understand from the autobiographical narrative of Dr. Mahitosh Mandal, that when the very concept of Sanskritization fails, definitely there is the concept of Dalitization. And Dalitization is the only way for the identity of the Dalit people. But Mohitash Mandal's story pervades all this binary of Sanskritization and Dalitization, all the conflict of center margin, all the relation between uh, caste-based social identity and caste-based constitutional identity. The story is provoking the very question of human. Human. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Palash, for your brilliant presentation. Am I audible, Palash?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. So, as per the text of the Dr. Mohitosh Mandal is concerned, I mean, I have few observations. I mean, at the end of the text, I mean, the last paragraph, Dr. Mahitosh Mandal writes, okay, let me read. Rohit wrote that he wanted to be a scientist like Carl Sagan. I have also some wishes like Rohit in my life. But today, when I have been writing about the oppression I had gone through and about millions of others like me, I am tagged as Dalit revolutionary. Now, at that particular time, he raises two important questions. And this question will lead me to raise another issue as well. The questions that Dr. Mandal raises are, number one, will it be ever possible for me to put me outside the bracket of my reservation category? And the other questions are, will I ever be able to cross the barrier of the identity of my Dalit individuality? And last question, will I be able to survive as normal human being like others? And in your presentation, you also talked about the concept of humanization, that by transcending all the barriers of narrow categorization, that our primary motto will be to become human. And we know very well, as a students of English literature, the humanism has been flourishing the Western and Indian scholarship. And talking about the Elizabethan period and Elizabethan literature, which is very often known as the first modernist literature, flourished in England. We know how the humanist movement flourished, that also along with the Protestant movement. But my observation is, to be a humanist is a very abstract thing. Uh, of course, you can participate in any particular program and talk about humanism. You can talk about the human values. You can talk about the utilitarian values. And you can urge people to become humanitarian. But I think that sort of a discussion of becoming humanitarian is very much abstract unless one contextualize what does he or she mean by humanization, or by the process of being humanist in a particular social scenario. Say, for example, the very concept of becoming be humanist is related to the life of everyone. I mean, everyone is free to become a humanist. But the caste system as a particular structure prohibits someone to become humanist. Let me give you some examples. I mean, we know very well that there are many doctors who under the scheduled caste category have been practicing in different medical colleges. And after the successful completion of MBBS, they will be posted in MD, or they will be posted in many government hospitals, or they privately open their chambers to practice the medical profession, right? So a person born in a remote village of Bengal, in a scheduled caste community, transcends all the barriers of madhyamik, higher secondary, graduation, I mean the MBBS and then the MD, and then becomes a doctor. And if this person with a surname Mandal or Tikadar or Biswas or even Mandi comes to the city and opens a private dispensary and tries to practice his medical knowledge by getting engaged with the people, then usual thing is that that's what the status of this particular doctor with the surname Mandal or Biswas or Mandi has a contradictory view to that of a same doctor, the same designations, but with a different set of surnames like Mukherjee and Banerjee and Chatterjee. So when someone talks about the concept of humanization or being human, then this person or this speaker has to contextualize. I mean, he or she has to contextualize the very concept of, I would like to say, identity politics, because no one is beyond the very identity that he or she is attributed to in the family, he or she attributed to in the society, or he or she attributed to in a university. So by reading the biographical narrative of Dr. Mahitosh Mandal, we come to know that this man's journey from a remote village of Gosaba to the center of the Kolkata's educational pride, Presidency University, which is very often thought to be the symbol of Bengal Renaissance, very often associated with the name of Dirozio and others, that this journey is also a journey of becoming a humanist. But here we have to stop and think how caste and this caste-based social stratification prohibits Dr. Mandal to become a humanist or to raise his voice as a humanist or to claim him as a humanist. Being a Mandal, being a Biswas, being a Mandi, one cannot, despite having a lot of studies of Erasmus, of Thomas More, of Shakespeare, and other great humanist thinkers, of other great Enlightenment philosophers like John Locke. Despite having a lot of reading, a person with a surname Mandal and Biswas and Mahato and Bagdi and Mandi cannot claim their humanist position. In this particular respect comes Dr. Ambedkar and his idea of annihilation of caste. That means if you want to become a humanist here in India, if you want to become a humanist here in West Bengal, then the very first thing that you need to do is to destroy the concept of caste, destroy the very mechanism of caste, destroy this monster called caste. If you do not destroy the concept of caste, then no matter how great you are, no matter how great degrees you have earned, no matter how many research papers you have published, and no matter how great teacher you are, it won't allow you to move forward. And it is also supported by some other issues like matrimonial sites. You know very well in his paper, Castes in India, their mechanism, genesis, and development, that Dr. Ambedkar read in the Department of Anthropology seminar 1916. At the very beginning, he writes that if Hindus migrate to other countries in the world, then the Indian caste system will be a global problem. He clearly mentions it in his essay, and this essay is included in Babasaheb Ambedkar writings and speeches. So if you read this essay, and you come to know how Ambedkar is trying to visualize the very, I would like to, migration of caste from India to South Africa, from India to United States of America, from India to UK. And if you recently, come to know about the caste-based discrimination that many employees are facing in Silicon Valley, then you find that becoming humanist is not at all an important thing unless you or I or any other belonging to that of a social stratification kills the concept of caste. Now here comes the question, how to kill the concept of caste, how to kill this monster caste. And that, I think, is a very important issue, because what Dr. Mahitosh Mandal experiences throughout his life, and now still he is experiencing, and the way he tries to just describe what happened with him is an indication that despite having his education, his knowledge, his sophistication, he is barred, he is prohibited, he's stopped from moving forward. Now that is very important. That's why whenever someone, at the beginning of this particular autobiographical narrative, we feel that the author Mahitosh Mandal aspires to be a humanist rather than a Dalit revolution. In other words, we can say that he is trying to transcend his Dalit identity. and and establishes himself as a humanist. And here I would like to raise some issues that if Dr. Mahitosh Mandal cannot kill the concept of caste, practice of caste, the monster called caste, then he or any other person will never be able to become a humanist. Because to become humanist means, it doesn't mean, to become humanist does not mean that you have a lot of qualifications, you have a great reputation, you published many papers, and you are a great author, so you are humanist. It does not go like that in India. It might go like that in Australia or South Africa or any other country. But to become humanist means something else here in India. And that's why I think if anyone, I know there are many people who are not quite, they are not quite happy to identify themselves as Dalit. Uh, uh, Even I see many people who do not disclose that they are scheduled caste. Even I know many people who do not even want to display the portrait of Dr. Ambedkar in their home. Fine. But my central point is that if you can, if it is India, and if you happens to be caught within this cobweb of, I mean, the caste, then no matter how great you are, you won't be able to become a humanist. So that, I think, is an indication. So if Dr. Mahitosh Mandal aspires to be a humanist, it is a great thing to be a humanist. But it comes only when somebody can kill the caste. If someone cannot kill the caste, then no matter how great he is, no matter how many qualifications this person actually acquires, he or she cannot establish this concept of humanism. This is my observation, and I want to stop here. I mean, if others can put their suggestions or any other issues, then we can continue. Otherwise, we will conclude.
Yes, Jyoti, I'm totally agree with you, uh, because the kind of thing that you were trying to say, and in that context, this particular text is very, very important, and it is a thought provoking to think about the caste orientation and to establish the anti casteist outlook, and that's very important. And I think it's almost 9 and 10, and if anybody can share his or her views, please let in. Otherwise, uh, Jyoti will conclude the program, and in next week, I will request Jyoti to announce our next live stream on Saturday, so that our scholars get themselves ready beforehand. Over to Jyoti.
Okay, thank you, Palash, for your brilliant presentation on the text "I Am a Dalit" by Dr. Mahitosh Mandal, who is right now the head of the department, English, Presidency University. Uh, as I have already mentioned, that Bahujan Scholars Union has been formed to uh, reproduct the, to produce the knowledge and to reproduce the knowledge and to disseminate and distribute this knowledge uh, through social media. I would like to say that Mr. Palash Biswas' reading of "I Am a Dalit" by Dr. Mahitosh Mandal is very important, and this is a beginning. We are committed to continue our discussions on different issues, the different texts, different themes, to be done by different scholars in the online platform. And in this respect, I would like to say, instead of next Sunday, uh, our program will be uh, held on Saturday. And on Saturday, uh, uh, I mean, the issue, the concept like the priesthood and the concept of cultural reservation will be discussed by Jyoti Biswas. So, and at the same time, we will let you know the detailed topic that will be dealt with coming Saturday. So, I request all of you to stay with us. We will notify all of you about our upcoming programs. But as I told you, we are committed to continue our intellectual nourishment every week. And in this respect, your participation, your encouragement is always welcome. So, with this note, I would like to thank all of you. I would like to thank Mr. Palash Biswas for his presentation. I would like to thank all the scholars who joined with us, and I would like to thank all our viewers who watched all of us on YouTube. And in this particular respect, I would like to conclude tonight's program. Good night. Jai Bhim.